Hi everyone, Dead Battery here, and thank you for joining me on my channel. Today's video is going to be an update on the Atari Flashback 2. So a while ago, my friend sent me a challenge, and the challenge was to take the Atari Flashback 2 that already comes with 40 pre-built games in it, and also make it a working 2600. It was found out that once you take the system apart and look at the motherboard, there's actually spots, and 24 of them, to attach wires to that then go to a cartridge reader that will play real Atari 2600 games. And let me tell you, this was definitely a challenge. When he first sent it with the idea, I was very nervous about it. This was a lot of wires and a lot of stuff, and my first initial looks at the schematics seemed very complicated. The Atari Flashback 2 was released in 2005, and it sold for roughly about 30 bucks, and it looked like a mini 2600. So the biggest thing is, before you get started with this, there's a couple things you're going to need. The first thing is you're going to need 24 wires, and from what I could find, the smartest thing to do was to just find a 24 ribbon. So I found this one, and I decided to get it in a bunch of different colors because I thought it was going to be easier for me to see where everything's at, since there are 24 of them. And then I just cut off the length I wanted, and then I pulled them apart and then stripped the ends so that I had the metal showing. And I did this on both sides. You're also gonna need a cartridge reader from a 2600, and I found one on eBay for $15. And the last thing you'll need besides the Atari Flashback 2 was a switch, because you had to let the system know you were switching between the 40 games that are already in it to a game cartridge. Now, the biggest thing about the Atari Flashback 2 is to make sure you have a real one. Apparently, there is a fake one that is floating around that does the same thing. However, it does not support the modification to put a game cartridge reader on it. So if you're deciding to do this mod, I would definitely have a look on the internet and figure out if yours is a genuine one or if it's a replica. I think the biggest challenge with this was somehow my camera kept cutting in and out. I'm not too sure what happened, and I was not able to record the first half of me taking it apart and showing it before I started doing the soldering. The system comes apart really easily. There are 5 screws on the back. One of them is hidden underneath the middle sticker, so you are gonna have to break through that. And then after that, the motherboard at the top is just 10 screws. So once it's all apart, now we can move on to the next phase. I decided to take the lid and take it outside and carve the hole in it that I was going to need to put the cartridge reader in. And you can do this basically how you want to. You can put it on the top or the side. I decided to go for the top, so I kind of found where the middle was, marked it with permanent marker, and then took my Dremel outside and just cut it all out, and it made an absolute mess, and plastic went flying, and it hit me a couple times, and it was hot. The thing smoked, but I got it all out of the way. I was just covered in black plastic, but it worked in the end. And then I made sure it was properly lined up, and then I used tons of hot glue to get it all into place, because that's what I saw a lot of other people using. I took it out of its actual compartment, and then what I did was I stripped the wire and I soldered down 1 through 12 and then 13 through 24. And I decided to also encase them in shrink tubing. I didn't have anything smaller than this, but it worked. And I don't know if it was necessary, but I did see a couple people talking about it just to secure the wire. And before I did that, I did make sure that every single one was connected. So let's see if I can get this actually working and change this Atari Flashback 2 with embedded games to a real working 2600. So here's where the video picked back up. I'm not too sure why it decided to pick back up, but I'm glad it did. But I have done the Dremel, and I've put the cartridge reader back together. And I'm just deciding how I want to do this ribbon, how I want to lay it in the system so that it doesn't bunch up. And then deciding that it was too long and work with a shorter ribbon. Once I cut it shorter, that means that I'm going to have to rip each of the wires apart so that they can reach the motherboard. And to make it easier, I just use my scissors to cut little notches, and then I just got my nail in between each of them and pulled them down gently just so I wouldn't accidentally break one. This is what's written on the motherboard on the back, and as you can see, it actually has 1 through 24, and it says J3 short equals a game cartridge, and J9 open means a game cartridge. So it kind of has the instructions on the one side, and then the back half, you just have to find all 24 spots. And there are different types of motherboards, so you just have to make sure you figure out which one is yours and figure out where all the 24 are. I was trying to decide if it was going to be easier to keep it inside the system or take it out, and I decided that it was going to be easier for me to take the part out that actually reads the games instead of keeping it in the system. As I'm going through, I'm realizing that I'm going to have to be very careful putting each one of these down because the places where they attach to are small and I don't want to tear a trace and I don't want it to be connected to another one and then short out. And I decide to get out the multimeter and make sure that it's connected to the pin, but also make sure it's not accidentally connected to one of the ones next to it. Here is a closer video so you can try to see what I'm working on, but it's very tiny work. So watch your fingers, make sure you don't burn yourself. And probably about every 5, I'm going through and retesting all the spots to make sure none of them are connected to each other. As you get farther up, it does become a little difficult because they are so close. So I'm deciding on what angle I want to put all the wires down so that I don't overlap them and I don't burn an existing one. Now that I've got 1 through 12, I'm gonna go through and retest them. I'm gonna also kind of move the wires out of the way because the 20s are really close to 1, 2, and 3, and the way I have my wires, they kind of are underneath some of them that are coming out the other areas. So now we can start on 13 through 24. And once again, about every 5, I'm just double checking to make sure they're connected properly. Now you have to work on the switch. And there were 2 examples that I was looking at, including a video, and I'll post all that stuff below. But the first one I looked at didn't give any instructions for a switch. It kind of gave a side glance of some jumper, but didn't explain it, and I didn't understand what they were talking about. And then I had this one where it looked like I needed to use 4 wires, 1 on each side, and then a full ground. And that was kind of confusing as well. I did try it. And then I found this one, and this one was making it sound like I only needed 3 wires, which would be an open, a close, and a ground. So I decided to give this one a try. When I first attempted this, I was looking at this schematic, which is not the correct motherboard. It's a different one, but the numbers are basically the same. And what I needed to do was I needed to jump J3. So I needed to solder it together or put a wire or something there that would put it together. And then I needed to take the 0 ohms off of J9 and put another wire there. However, while looking at this one, it was awfully close to R9 that also had a very small something on it. So I assumed that was what I needed to do. So I took it off, and luckily, I don't always do this, I kind of put it aside because you never know when you're going to need a 0 ohms, and I hooked up everything and nothing worked. And I was really bummed, and I went to work the next day and I looked at some schematics and realized that I got my letters mixed up. I removed R9, not J9. So I went back home and I found the little part and I put it under the microscope. I was able to get the hot tweezers and put it back into place and then remove the 0 ohms from J9. So here's what it all looks like. I haven't put it back into the system because I'm still running into some errors. But here's everything hooked up, everything's still connected. There are no shorts that I can tell of right now, and I am reaching out to some friends to help me. But when I switch it over for the game, here's the game. And this one's Defenders, and it's working fine. It looks fine. There's sound. The picture is good. However, when I switch it back, it looks like this. So I can't get to any of the 40 games already installed on it. And I don't understand how adding wires would change the games that are already in it. So I'm definitely going to have to do some research on it. So this process was a lot of fun, but it was just a lot in general. I didn't notice that my camera kept failing and it would do 1 second clips at a time, but then I would still see the numbers showing on the computer that it was recording. I'm not too sure what happened, but as it stands right now, it works. And it doesn't work. It works as a 2600. I can put games in it. But then when I flip it back, it's not reading the original 40. And I'm wondering if it's something I did because I took off R9 instead of J9. And I'm not too sure if it has to be phasing a certain way. I know with ceramic capacitors, it doesn't matter which direction it's facing, but I'm wondering if this one does. So I'm debating on getting the hot tweezers out and flipping it and seeing if that makes a difference. If that doesn't do it, maybe it is something to do with the switch, because right now I've only got 3 wires down. I've got one going to one side of J9 and then a jumper going across J3 and then on the ground so that it's open and closed. As mentioned, there was a schematic that looked like 4 wires, but as it stands right now, it works and doesn't work. So I think this is a really interesting mod. I like it. This is not something I would have attempted. This is also not something I thought was possible. And I think it's interesting that they loaded games on a motherboard that's also able to handle real games. And I'm wondering if they did that on purpose or it was just a glitch in the matrix. In the end, I am so thankful that Retro Gamer Gen X sent this to me. This has been an absolute challenge, but it's been a very rewarding challenge. And it made me stop and think a little bit about what I'm looking at before moving forward, because some things are just really difficult. And it made me stop and think about what I was working on a little bit more, since there were a couple schematics and concepts out there. I wish this video was more complete so that I could show anybody looking understand it a little bit more. I think this was a lot of fun, and if you decide to do this, just definitely take your time. Get everything you're going to need beforehand, get some extra just in case, and always breathe, because you don't want to get frustrated with something because it's not going to do you any good. As always, if you like this video, please like and subscribe, share with your friends, and I'll see you again in 2 weeks. Bye.